Shalom, guys. Welcome back to another episode here at YASHAV Ministry with Casa de Israel. Yara, I thank you for being here. If you like the content that we're putting up in our channel, please like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section down below. Also, if you want to join us in our congregation, I'll be putting the address on the screen. Our services are mainly in Spanish. We have translators, and our youth classes are in English. So you're free to join us and worship Elohim and learn His Word. Also, please share this content with any youth or anybody that's willing to listen, right? The more we study, we understand that we know less and we know nothing. And with that humble heart and that approach, we're led by the Spirit of Elohim, and we get to know Him. So this week's Torah portion is VAYESHEV, right? VAYESHEV is, and he lived. And so we're going to dig into this Torah, right, reading, and we're going to read through the Torah in its simplest form, right? I didn't have time to prepare a PowerPoint, so we're just going to read to the text, read to the purest form of the Torah, and we're going to understand a moral aspect of this, right? We have understood that the Bible has cycles, right, and has cycles of life. We have understood that Abraham had a cycle of life, Isaac had a cycle of life, right? And we have seen these things. And so Abraham was the soil of our faith, right? He's understood to be the father of the faith. And so he was given the promises and the blessings, right, that we are today seeing. And so every time we study the Torah, we're seeing Elohim's promises being fulfilled. And so by faith, we understand that these things happen just like Abraham did. And so Abraham was the soil, Isaac is the seed, the promise, and Jacob is the roots of all of this, right? He's starting to bring to fruition in the story that we're studying and learning from what the promise of Elohim is, right? But there is a aspect in the stories that we're humans, right? We're creation. And many people say, well, why did God let this happen? Why does this happen? Understand that God created us and He gave us an opportunity to obey Him and listen to Him. And humanity decided to create this separation in which they wanted to do whatever they want. And that is the problem, which in a sense is our blessing, right? Elohim created us and gave us free will. And so Elohim wanted us that with that free will, in the simplest form, what we did was give our obedience and give our honor and give our commitment and loyalty to Him, and He will give us that freedom to be creative and grow, right? But we choose not to do that, right? And so we learn from these intricate points in the Torah reading, and we learn what we should and should not do. Okay, so we're gonna do the blessing of the Torah, and then we're gonna jump into the reading. So it says, "Blessed are you, Adonai, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with its commandments and has ordered us to study the words of your Torah. Father, please, that the words of your Torah are pleasant to our mouth and to the mouth of your people, the house of Israel, to their children and the children of our children and their children, that our people of Israel know your Torah and your name and are students of it. Blessed are you, Elohim, who teaches the Torah to His people Israel. Blessed are you, Adonai, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all the people and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al diveri haTorah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Thank you, Father, for your word. So let's get started with this reading. So Jacob lived in the land of his fathers and sojourned in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Silpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought a bad report to them, to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I had dreamt. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheep arose to step upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaves. His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamt another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamt another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars are bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall I and your brothers and your mother indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept saying in his mind, Now his brothers went to pasture his father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I'll send you to them." And he said to him, "Here am I." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it's well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and the man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. They saw him from afar before he came near to them. They conspired against him and to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then he will say to the fierce animals, Then we will say that the fierce animals devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dream." So now we see that the brothers of Joseph are conspiring to basically kill him, right? They're jealous and envious of him, but we have to understand that one, the text says that his father favored him. Two, Joseph is just telling them the dreams, right? So they have creating this conception of this mindset that his brother is putting himself over them, but in reality, Jacob is favoring him because his personality, and Joseph was just telling them his dreams. And by him telling him their dreams, they and their own personal mindset or their insecurities were being affected by these dreams. Okay? And so, because we see that he's telling them the dreams, but he doesn't say anything after that. They jump into a conclusion. Okay? So, but when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of the hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into the pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robes, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, in their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Yehudah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. When the Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, they took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Now, so Reuben's plan was to save his brother. Yehudah decided to sell his brother. Okay? Right? He says, "Then they took Joseph's robes and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. They sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." Now they're being very hypocritical, and they're being very fake, right? They're saying, oh, this is our brother's robe. We found it. Can you please tell us if it is our brother's robe, right? And they're acting like as if they're in distress, right? And so a fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted and said, now shall I go down to Sheol to my son mourning? Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, and an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So we're understanding here that Joseph is born to Jacob, right? Joseph becomes a chosen one because Joseph is representing the lineage and the purpose of Elohim, right? His character is moldable. His character is willful. His character is honoring his house. Okay? So Joseph is being hated by his brothers because Joseph, one, is favored by his father because he's the one that's willing to do his father's will. Okay? And two, because they have insecurities and preconceptions of their own personal things that they haven't outgrown or mistake they have made, and they don't want to change or grow or mature. And so when they see Joseph doing the right things, right? Because Joseph is not doing anything wrong, right? He's telling his father when something is wrong, right? He is being obedient and consistent, right? And he is telling dreams that are being given to him. And by him giving those dreams, he is being hated because he has a gift, not because he's naturally just gifted, but because he is obedient. And we will see this as we go on, okay? But before we go on, we're going to do a little bit of history, ancient Near Eastern, right? Because we have to understand the context of everything. We have to do our best to understand what's going on because the Bible does not explain everything to us, okay? So, an Egyptian tomb painting from the 19th century BCE depicts a troll of Semitic merchants coming down to Egypt, right? Some of the men were wearing knee-length sleeveless garments that are colorful. We do not know whether these was the type of garments Jacob gave to Joseph, but it gives an idea of the fashions of the general period. A fresco from Mary in the 18th century BCE portrays priests dressed in garments made of rectangular pieces of cloth, various colors sewn together into long strips that is then wrapped around the body 7 or 8 turns, okay? From the ankles up to the chest and then draped over one shoulder. Various types of clothing communicated rank, right, and status in society, right? In the ancient world, the fabrics or the ornamentation, colors, length, and hem all played a role in indicating the position of the wearer. Undoubtedly, Joseph's coat designated authority as well as favor, but little more can be said because in the Hebrew word occurs only here in the passage describing Tamar's cloth, right? In 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse 19, right? No cognates from comparative Semitic languages offer any confident clarification, right? The traditional interpretation of a coat of many colors goes back to the Greek and Latin translation of the Old Testament, right? Through now abandoned in many scholarly circles. Most commentators favor something more along the line of full-length coat or long-sleeve coat, reflected in Akila's Greek translation in the 2nd century AD, right? So this is the image that it was describing, right, of the Egyptians and the Semitic people wearing the robes. And so it is interesting, right, how an interpretation can be brought out of this information. So we understand that the robe that he was given, was one of authority, right? And so Jacob wouldn't have given this to Joseph if he wasn't the one in authority. Now understand, Joseph is not the firstborn, right? But Joseph was given this robe because he's representing the duty of the firstborn. So the duty of the firstborn does not only hold itself to the firstborn. It holds to the firstborn if he lives up to that. If not, it trickles down to the brothers, okay? And why do I say it like this? Now, I'm not saying that hierarchy doesn't matter. I'm not saying that lineage doesn't matter. I'm not saying all these things. There's a lot of stuff that is connected to lineage, hierarchy. What I'm trying to say is that if you're not morally living correctly, you cannot reclaim any promises, blessings, or anything that Elohim gives because you're not honoring. Or better yet, you cannot reclaim anything that the Father or your fathers give you because you're not living correctly, right? If you're doing whatever you want and you're making mistakes and not honoring your father and your mother, when you go into the world and you do whatever you want and then you make a mistake and you fall and then you come home and you cannot come home and reclaim whatever you want because you haven't been living according to that. As is maybe your brother or your sister has been doing the right thing, right? And they've been taken care of by your parents and might be help, right? You cannot just come and have jealousy over them because you have chosen your own path and you have chosen to make mistakes, right? And everybody's going to make mistakes, but understand something. If you're not consistently or consciously enough trying to be better and understand that there is a structure in many things, you will not be able to grow, right? If you're consistently trying to go against the current and you're consistently trying to overthrow other people that are above you, you will not be able to succeed. Okay? So this is what happening with Joseph. Joseph has been given authority because he's being obedient. He's fulfilling the duties that all his other brothers were not doing. And his other brothers, because they were not able to do it, instead of changing and growing and maturing, they hated his brother. And they wanted to get rid of him, thinking that by getting rid of Joseph, their problems were going to be ended. But the problems are in here, right? The Torah, Yeshua said that the problem is not what goes into the body, it's what comes out. And what comes out is inside of your heart. Okay? So, let's keep reading. Right. So Joseph had a dream, right? In the ancient believed dreams derived from a divine realm where they are therefore taken seriously. Ordinary dreams of common people were believed to contain omens that communicated information about what the gods were doing, though they usually made no reference to a deity, right? Dreams were often filled with symbolism, necessitating an interpreter, though at times the symbols may reasonably self-evident. The information that came through dreams was not believed to be irreversible, right? So it was something that was going to happen, right? Dreams of rise to power, like the ones Joseph had, are known in the ancient Near East, notably one by Sargon, king of Akkad, a half a millennium earlier than Joseph. Sargon, cupbearer to the king, or Ursabab, recounts his dream to the king as follows. Right, so this is a story similar with a dream of a cupbearer that's gonna basically take over the king's throne. It says, there was a single young woman, goddess Inan. She was high as the heavens. She was broad as the earth, and she was firmly set as the base of a wall. For me, she drowned you in the great river of blood. Right? So this is what he's telling to his king, right? Ursabab's advisors reinterpreted the dream to suggest that it was Sargon who was going to die rather than the king. Right? What a coincidence. This demonstrates how even fairly transparent dreams could be interpreted to suit the desires of one party to another. Joseph's dream does not indicate the death of his brothers, simply their subordination to him. Right? There's nothing in the dream that leads them to consider that Joseph's eventually prominence will extend beyond the confines of the family, for only his family members bow down to him. It will not have occurred to any of them that Joseph will rise to position of second in command of a dominant world power. All right, so we're understanding that morally the dream is being described, right? Joseph is just saying the dreams that he's having. He's not stating anything, right? His brothers are the one that are interpreting the dream, right? Because of insecurities, of things that they haven't fixed on themselves. So they see him in the dream, right? Being in authority, and they don't like that. Okay? Now, jealousy comes into play and all this, right? So we're going to jump chapter 38, right? And we're going to go to chapter 39 because we're trying to understand Joseph's moral, right? Because there's a lot of beautiful things that is said about Joseph in chapter 39, right? So let's go to chapter 39. Chapter 39 says the following. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, and the officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had brought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph. Look at that. The Lord was with Joseph. And Joseph became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all the land, of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house over all he had. And the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in his house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge because of him. He had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So we're getting to understand Joseph. Now Joseph has been sold by his family, right, to the Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites, which are kind of his family too, sold them to the Egyptians. And now the Egyptian leader or master has him in his house, and he sees that Joseph, the Lord is with Joseph, and Joseph is being lifted up in ranks and having favor in their eyes because of his morale, right? He's just and righteous. He's obedient, right? And because of that morality, he's raising himself in standards and in stature in a kingdom that is not his, right? He's been shown favor, right? The father has shown favor in the eyes of the Egyptian leader, right? Because of Joseph's morale. Okay? Pay attention. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes to Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. And he has put everything that he has in my charge. He's not greater in his house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How can then I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" What? Excuse me? How then I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And she spoke to Joseph day after day, and he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. Now, Joseph, right, he's in leadership, right? He's been given control of the house. And Potiphar doesn't have any doubt on Joseph. He's not scared of Joseph. He's not envious of Joseph. He doesn't hate Joseph, right? And Potiphar's wife wants Joseph to lay with her, and he says, "Am I going to sin against God and do this wickedness after the favor and the honor that I have received from Potiphar, right? Or through Potiphar from the father, right? Because the father is the one in control. Understand this. The father is the one in control wherever you are. Just because you can't see him, and just because evil reigns on earth today, doesn't mean that evil has any power over God's or Elohim's people or things, right? Joseph is shown favor in Potiphar's eyes because the father is blessing Joseph because of his obedience and his justice and righteousness and his honor that he's carrying himself with. Even though he was sold, he was betrayed by his family. Okay? The father will show favor to those that honor him no matter where they go. Okay? Let's keep reading. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of his house was there in the house, she caught him by his garments, saying, Lie with me. But he left his garments in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garments in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came into me to lie with me and cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garments beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then she laid up his garments by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came into me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, This is the way your servant treated me, his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison and the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Now, why is Elohim showing favor to Joseph? Because Joseph walked away from an evil mistake or a sin, right? Joseph, with all the power that he had, could have laid with Potiphar's wife and nobody would have known. But he said, would I sin against my Elohim? You see what? The mindset of Joseph is not Potiphar. Potiphar, yes, you understand that you work for him and you live accordingly to the rules in his vicinity, but you have to understand that you represent something above Potiphar in the world, which is Elohim. So when she wanted him to sin, he said, would I bring dishonor to my Elohim? Think about that. In the world, would you bring dishonor to Elohim? That is a question that you have to be willing to ask yourself. So, and the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Joseph was focusing on fulfilling Elohim's will. Okay? In the world, right? In Egypt, in bondage. Joseph is in bondage. We are in bondage. We're in Egypt. Right? I feel like my pastor. I'm like losing breath. Right? He's in Egypt. Okay? We have to understand this. He's in Misraim, in bondage. In bondage, he was focusing on honoring Elohim. He didn't care about everything else. He said, I'm going to honor Elohim. And by him focusing on Elohim, everything else was succeeding. Not because he did it, but because Elohim was showing favor and steadfast love to him because he was willing to obey Elohim and honor him in bondage. Sorry guys, I'm a little excited. Let's keep reading. So, chapter 40. Sometime after, this cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard and the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamt, the cupbearer and the baker, of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came into them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked the Pharaoh's officers who were with them in custody in his master's house, Why are your faces downcast today? They said to him, we have had dreams, and there's no one to interpret them. And Joseph said to them, interpretation belongs to God. Please tell them to me. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, and he said to him, in my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches, and as soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripped into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed them on the cup in Pharaoh's hands. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to officer, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were in his cupbearer. Only remember me when it's well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream, where the 3 cakes baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days, and in the 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on the tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. And on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made the feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup on Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker. And Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So here Joseph interpreting their dream, right? Joseph says that he's a Hebrew that was sold by his brothers, right? Stolen from his land, sold to his brothers, and has been placed in prison unjustly for a lie, right? And so Joseph is giving us a perfect representation of how we live in the world, right? Many of us grow up and have been taken out of Elohim's vicinity, of Elohim's protection. And some of us grow without Elohim, but many of us do grow under Elohim, and we take ourselves out and we go into the land of Egypt, right? And so we have to understand that wherever we are, we represent Elohim, right? We represent a light, right? And so this week's big Halasha portion, right, is connected to the video I made for Hanukkah, which if you haven't seen it, go look it up. And it's John 10, right? And so we're gonna go into that. So it's John 10, verse 22. And so here Yeshua is at the Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah, right? We're celebrating Hanukkah right now, day 2. And so Yeshua is at the Feast of Dedications in Jerusalem in the temple, right? And so it was winter. Yeshua was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon, right? The Jews then gathered around him and were saying to him, how long will you keep us in suspense? And this is during the Hanukkah celebration. If you're the Messiah, tell us plainly. Yeshua answered them, I told you, you do not believe me. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me. But you do not believe because you are not of my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give eternal life to them, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of my Father's hand. Land, I and the Father are one. Then Jews picked up stones again to stone him. And Yeshua answered them, I showed you many good works from the Father. For which of them are you stoning me? The Jews answered him, For a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself out to be Elohim. Yeshua answered them, Hasn't it been written in your law? I say you are gods. If he called them gods, to whom the word of God came, and the scriptures cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you are blaspheming, because I said I am the Son of God? If I do not do the works of my Father, I do not believe me. If I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I do them, though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I in my Father. So, what are Yeshua telling us here? Right? So just like Joseph, right? Yeshua has come to his brothers, and his brothers do not want to accept the message that Elohim, the Father, is giving to the Son. Because the message goes against whatever they want and whatever they think and whatever they perceive. Yeshua is telling us that his action and his works are the Father's. So he's acting on behalf of what the Father wants. Just like Joseph. Joseph was acting on behalf of what the Father wanted. He was obedient. He was consistent. Just like Yeshua. Yeshua was obeying. And many people didn't want to listen to Yeshua because everything that the Father was saying through Yeshua was affecting insecurities that they did not want to change, that they did not want to grow. They wanted to keep doing whatever they wanted and keep in their back of their mind that, oh yeah, it's okay. I'm okay. It's fine. I can do whatever I want. I do a couple Sabbaths here and there. I keep the feast sometimes when I can. If I do, maybe, I don't know. Joseph and Yeshua were consistent. Yeshua said, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to Elohim what is Elohim's. He didn't show partiality. He said, negotiate Elohim's time with them and negotiate Caesar's time with Elohim. No. It says, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to Elohim what is Elohim's. Joseph obeyed Elohim and represented him morally to the fullest. He was blessed. Everything he did was blessed by Elohim because he honored him in everything he did. Yeshua is saying that the Father is in him, meaning that the actions, the morale that Elohim wants in a man, Yeshua has. Joseph had him. That's why Joseph was blessed. Understand that wherever you are, wherever you do, Elohim is with you as long as you are honoring his word and honoring his will and fulfilling justice and righteousness and being obedient. We learn from Joseph and Yeshua the same things. They're the same story. Taken from his father, sold by his brothers, given to the world, killed and destroyed, tortured. But in the world, they rose because the Father gave them the rise. Because the Father raised them because they stayed consistent and obedient and never changed and never negotiated Elohim's time or Elohim's honor and character, no matter where they were. Elohim raised them. He raised Joseph in stature in the eyes of men in Egypt. And he raised Yeshua from the dead and made him our salvation. And through him we are saved. And through him we have access to the kingdom of Elohim. But when we study their morale and we study who they were and what they did, they stay consistent, they stay obedient, and they honor Elohim. In the second day of Hanukkah, please light up your Hamash, like I said, that middle candle, the servant. Light up your 2 candles and stay lit. Like the young kids say, stay lit. Live in Torah. Live in Torah. So, this is for Elias, who wanted me to do this. My young people, stay lit, like you like to say. Live in Torah and obey Elohim. Have a great week. Shavua tov. Shabbat shalom. Thank you.